Right friends, welcome back to comprehension and vocabulary. This is 38th session, and here we are going to discuss yesterday's The Hindu editorial last gasp tasks, and tomorrow we are going to deliberate today's Economic Times editorial, that is bad loans call for a political solution. Bad loans call for a political solution. So, this we are going to deliberate tomorrow, and what is meant by bad loans and all these aspects we will discuss tomorrow. So, today this is with regard to goods and services tax. Goods and services tax we discussed in detail last gasp tasks, that means these tasks which are left over are the tasks pertaining to the final movements. So, last gasp tasks means the tasks which are left over are the tasks of the final movement, and these last gasp tasks must be completed in a proper manner. So, that is the essence of this editorial, and if required this introduction of GST can be postponed by 1 month so as to give more time to the stakeholders. So, that is the meaning of this essence of this editorial. So, here before going ahead, goods and services tax is the landmark achievement in independent India. There are several taxes. I am talking about indirect taxes. Direct taxes are different. Direct taxes are personal income tax. If I am earning money, I will pay, that is personal income tax. Second one is corporation tax, that means companies like Reliance Industries and TPC, they pay over their profits. So, that is corporation tax. Personal income tax, corporation tax, these are examples of direct taxes, but direct taxes are limited in fact, but indirect taxes are much more in our country, and indirect taxes are levied partly by center and by states. Central government levies excise duty on the manufacture of products. Then service tax means if you are going to 5-star hotel, on the service in 5-star hotel you will be taxed, that is service tax. And basic customs duty, when the goods are imported or exported, then customs duty can be imposed. So, these are all imposed by center, and state government imposes several taxes like entry tax, octroi duty, taxes on lotteries, luxury tax, entertainment tax, like that several duties are imposed by states, and local bodies are also given taxation powers on certain aspects. So, here center and states, the indirect taxes will be subsumed, and in future we will have goods and services tax. Initially some of the things like real estate will be kept out of this GST, and most of the things will be brought under GST. Advantages I have given here. In the long run, GDP will be increased by 1% to 2%, and less corruption, low compliance cost, substantial reduction in logistics costs. That means at the entry of each and every state, there will not be need for check post. It will act as one nation, one tax theory, or you can say one common market, and it is the example of cooperative federalism. Cooperative federalism from examination perspective, if you look at GST, what is GST Council, what is GST network, and various components of GST, what is meant by IGST, at the same time what do you understand by here destination based tax, what do you understand by cooperative federalism. So, these are the things which you should keep in mind, because GST is example of cooperative federalism. At the same time, GST is destination based tax, right. So, having learned this article talks about merit goods, demerit goods. Merit goods are services. If you look at the bicycles, you can say bicycles can be merit goods. Taxation on bicycles can be less because they are required by the common man. At the same time, vaccines can be considered as merit goods. At the same time, pharmaceuticals, medicines. Medicines are required for the common man. So, these are merit goods. Ambulances, these are part of merit goods. The GST is talking about merit goods, standard goods as well as demerit goods. I am just explaining you what are merit goods. Merit goods means which are required for the common man. One example is bicycles, vaccines, then pharmaceuticals, then ambulances. These are examples of merit goods. If you look at demerit goods are costly goods where the rich people can afford higher taxation. Example is high-end cars, and at the same time demerit goods are the goods which are harmful for the human beings. Maybe alcohol, maybe cigarettes, maybe tobacco products. So, this high fat, high sugar and high salt foods. So, this junk foods with high fat, high sugar and high salt foods, these are known as demerit goods. Then tobacco products, these are also examples of demerit goods. So, we discussed about merit goods, demerit goods. So, demerit goods are the goods which are harmful for the human beings, and at the same time luxury products which are where the rich persons are affordable for high taxation, high end luxury cars, right. So, this is about merit goods, demerit goods. As per GST Council is 1/3 central government representation, 2/3 state government's representation, that is headed by the finance minister, that decided to put various goods into merit goods, standard goods, demerit goods category. As per the taxation, essential goods or merit goods are to be taxed at 0% or 5%. Some of the goods will not have tax. Some of the goods, that means merit goods, may have 5%. So, the examples I have given here: vegetables, fruits, ambulances, vaccines, pharmaceuticals. So, these are all basically merit goods, and some of them may not invite any tax and some of them may be taxed at 5%. So, this is about merit goods. The second one is standard goods. Standard goods are taxed at 12% and 18%. Standard goods will be taxed at around 12% and 18%. So, here air conditioners, then refrigerators, TVs, then small cars, these are all examples of this standard goods. So, standard goods are to be taxed at 12% and 18%. Then let us look at demerit goods. As I have already told you, high-end cars, pan parag, then tobacco products, aerated drinks, cigarettes. So, these are demerit goods, and higher taxation of 28% will be there in GST. Not only that, on the demerit goods, in addition to 28%, there will be cess imposed, and the cess will be used by the central government to compensate the states whichever are losing revenue because of implementation of GST. Some manufacturing states like Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra are likely to lose some revenue because GST is consumption driven, or you can say destination based tax. So, when GST is a destination based tax, the states where manufacturing is not developed like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, they will be benefited. However, the states like Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, they may be the losers. So, here to compensate for the losing states, central government will use this cess to compensate for the losing states. So, this cess will be imposed over and above the demerit goods, right. So, this cess will be used to compensate for the states whichever are losing revenue because of the implementation of GST for 5 years, please understand. Having learnt this, let us go back to the passage. Lastgasp tasks. After the agreement on all GST bills, the rate fitment process needs to be addressed. Gasp means basically catch one's breath with an open mouth. So, by surprise, I gave an example. Husband is normally the conducive person. Normally, husband, I am talking about one example, husband is conducive person, and on one fine morning, he sent a gift to his wife. Slowly opening the gift sent by my husband, I almost gasped with surprise. Suddenly, she gasped with surprise. With surprise, she opened her mouth as a element of surprise. So, under those circumstances, gasp is used, but gasp is also used at the moment or point of completion. When you look at civil war in Syria, this is the last gasp of civil war in Syria. So, this is the last movement of civil war in Syria if civil war comes to an end. So, last gasp tasks after the agreement on GST bills, the rate fitment process needs to be addressed. Rate fitment means, as I have already explained you, 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, which goods will go into which category, that is the final thing left over. So, this editorial talks about most of the works were completed by the GST Council, and what is left over is various types of goods and services are to be fitted into various tax slabs. So, this rate fitment process needs to be addressed. This is to be done without lobbying, without pressure from various stakeholders. At its 12th meeting last Friday, the GST Council is constitutional body. It is established based on Article 279, if I am not wrong. So, the state and union territories GST bills were approved along with necessary corrections to the 3 other bills the council had cleared previously. So, please understand, the state and union territories GST bills were approved. In time, the GST council also made some corrections to the already previously accepted 3 bills: central GST, integrated GST is on interstate sale, compensation. I have just now told you 5 years this compensation is to be given for the states which lose revenue. So, all 5 bills are cleared, paves the way. That means now the path is clear. So, now the task to be done is, now this paves the way for state assemblies and parliament to ratify these laws quickly. State assemblies have to ratify this state GST bill. State GST bill is to be ratified by state assembly, then parliament has to ratify some of the bills. So, this paves the way for state assemblies and parliament to ratify these bills quickly to meet the proposed July 1 rollout date for the system. So, the rollout, what is meant by paves the way? Paves the way means to create the circumstances to enable something to happen. Paves the way means to create the circumstances to make something to happen. Now, the bills were cleared by GST Council. Now, the things are clear for the state assemblies and parliament to introduce the bills. That is why he used this paves the way, this paves the way, that means this created the circumstances. So, with the passage of bills by the GST Council, this paved the way, that means this created the circumstances for state assemblies and parliament to ratify these laws quickly in order to meet the proposed July 1 rollout. So, July 1 rollout means if you are doing something for the first time, if some program is rolled out, then you use rollout. For the first time, if something is implemented, then you have to use rollout. One example is Reliance Jio rolled out its operations on pan-India basis last year and obtained 100 million customers in 170 days. So, rollout is to be used when some system or product is done for the first time, right. So, this paragraph is very clear. Then let us move ahead. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has said the Union Cabinet will soon take up the 4 laws. Union Cabinet, because 4 laws are to be passed by Union Cabinet, because these 4 laws pertains to Parliament. State GST laws pertains to state. Here IGST, integrated GST, then compensation law, at the same time Union Territory GST, then central GST. These 4 are to be cleared by the Parliament. So, the Finance Minister has said the Union Cabinet will soon take up the 4 laws that the centre has to steer through Parliament. What is meant by steer? Some movement is to be guided. Normal meaning of steering is guiding or controlling the movement. Here I gave an example. Radhika steered her guests into the dining room. Radhika steered her guests into the dining room. She has taken her guests into the dining room. Similarly, in the parlance of this passage, this is to be followed in a specified direction. That is why steer is used. So, while the respective state governments will take up the GST law. So, state GST law will be passed by them, central GST will be passed by Parliament. Separately, officers from the states and the centre, are expected to finalize He is talking about future. By this weekend, that means before the weekend, drafts means which will be discussed for finalization. Drafts means something is in draft stage, that means it is not final. Draft will be prepared by the officers, subsequently it will be discussed. Drafts for 4 pending regulations out of a total of 9 that lay down the administrative procedures and processes to be followed by taxpayers under the GST regime. So, under the GST regime, out of 9 there are 4 pending regulations. Officers will sit together from centre and states, they will lay down the administrative framework to be followed by the taxpayers under the GST regime that is expected to be completed before this weekend. The council will meet again on March 31st to consider these drafts. Draft is prepared by the officers. Finally, GST council will take the final decision on those drafts. This will give the centre enough buffer to make the transition to the new system. Transition means some change from one type of system to other type of system. So, this will give the centre enough buffer to make the transition to the new system. So, here buffer means something that provides protection against difficult situations or problems. Buffer. I gave one example, this is classic example, personal savings, especially by women in our country. Personal savings, especially by women in our country, acts as a buffer during the times of financial hardship. During the times of financial hardship, this will act as a buffer. Then transition, this is the process of changing from one system to another. So, altogether if there is paradigm shift from one system to another, that is a transition. I gave an example, several Indian organizations try to maintain status quo and they feel transition as a painful affair. But nowadays tech related companies need to embrace evolving technologies so as to stay on in the competition. So, transition is very much essential in the present day era of tech driven society, right. Though industry has indicated, industry means the persons or companies whoever are paying tax as per GST. Industry has indicated that means when something is referred to the present thing, then has indicated will come. If it is had indicated, it refers to some past instance. then you have to use had indicated, but has indicated or have indicated will come when something is referred to the present juncture. Though industry has indicated that it needs at least 3 months after to prepare for GST once it sees the fine print. What is the meaning of fine print? Once all the rules and regulations in minute details are made known to the industry, that is the meaning of fine print. Now the industry says that it needs at least 3 months to prepare for GST once it sees the fine print. Fine print means minute details. So, after the rules and regulations are made available, then after seeing all the rules and regulations in minute details, I gave an example, one should read the fine print before signing the contract. One should read the fine print, that means all rules and regulations in minute detail. Now the industry says, once the GST fine print is ready, then we require 3 months. One major action will still be pending on April 1, one major action will still be pending, expecting that by March 31st, all the rules and regulations will be over, because some of the rules and regulations will be decided when the officials sit together before this week. They will be finalized on 31st March, but on April 1, one major action will still be pending. He is talking about future. On April 1, one major action will still be pending. That action, he is talking about that action. Here in between these two, he is talking about what is that action. That action could prove to be among the trickiest for the council. He is talking about one action. What is that action? He has given in between and leave those for the time being. Read the sentence. That action could prove to be among the trickiest. That may prove to be, could prove to be means it may be the most, or you can say it may be the difficult task for the council. Tricky means difficult, trickiest he used. So, the most difficult task you can say. So, the most difficult task will be the action which is required to be done after April 1. What is that action? That fitment of thousands of commodities and services into 5 GST rate slabs 0, 5, 12, 18, 28. Why I explained in advance is, unless you know those aspects, you cannot follow this passage. So, the fitment of thousands of commodities and services into the 5 GST rate slabs could prove to be the most difficult task for the council from April 1. Later on, he will tell why it is difficult. Tricky means difficult. Solving the problem of sharing of river waters between India and Bangladesh is quite tricky. The rate fitment process into 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, unlike legislative nuances you have to use when you look at finer things. Here I gave one example. Rajesh is familiar with the nuances of the local dialect spoken by the predominant population. So, in finer details you can say, to understand the difference minutely between one thing and the other thing, in that context this nuance is used. So, Rajesh is familiar with the nuances of the local dialect spoken by the predominant population. So, nuance is used basically to indicate subtle difference or shade of meaning. So, unlike legislative nuances, so he is talking about, please understand the sentence, the rate fitment process, unlike legislative nuances. So, previous paragraph he talked about the next thing which is left over on April 1 will be the trickiest. That April 1 thing is fitment process into 5 slabs. So, the rate fitment process is more susceptible to lobbying, unlike legislative nuances. So, legislative nuances are slightly easy aspects. And the most difficult aspect is this fitment process. Why that is difficult? Because there are thousands of commodities, there are thousands of various commodities and services, and at this juncture there is possibility of lobbying, and this is more susceptible to lobbying. Susceptible means influenced by a particular thing. I gave two examples. Patients with diabetes are susceptible for various types of infections, and she is not very susceptible to flattery. So, here likely to be influenced or formed by a particular thing is susceptible. What is meant by lobbying? Lobbying is here persuading somebody in the government. If MLA is known to me, if MP is known to me, if minister is known to me, then influencing the minister to give advantage to my company is lobbying. If I influence the politician so that it causes advantage to my organization, that is lobbying. So, here the next process from April 1 is susceptible for lobbying, because thousands of commodities are to be fitted into various slabs. There may be lot of lobbying not only from state governments, but also from the various industry as organizations. So, not just from different sections of industry, not only from different sections of industry, but also states that would like a favorable tax treatment for products and services they excel in. So, if some state is specialized in producing some particular product, that is the meaning of excel. So, states may lobby for favorable tax treatment for the products which the state is excelling or producing. So, there may be susceptibility for lobbying not only from industry, but also from states for the products which they excel in. What is the meaning of excel? Excel means basically exceptionally good or proficient in an activity. Chetan Bhagat is a graduate from Indian Institute of Technology, but he excelled as a novel writer. I gave it as an example. For instance, he is explaining, for instance, the GST Council has now approved a ceiling on the cess that could be imposed. These things I explained you already, so I am not spending much time here. For instance, the GST Council has now approved a ceiling on the cess that could be imposed over and above the highest GST rate of 28% on pan masala, chewing tobacco and cigarettes, luxury cars and aerated drinks. I have just now told you cess will be imposed over and above 28% for demerit goods. For all such sin goods, demerit goods, other name is sin goods, the cess ceiling has been set higher under the GST than the level necessary to maintain the present level of taxation. So, here under GST more than 28%, the cess is kept very high. At present the rate may be something, by including the cess, the rate under GST will go higher than the present rate on these sin goods. But he is telling some contrary thing, but biddies have been kept out of the cess net altogether in order to avoid friction with the states that could delay the broader reform. So, to avoid friction with some of the state governments, otherwise what will happen? If a friction is there with the state governments, overall this process may be delayed. So, to avoid that, to avoid friction with the state governments, BDs are kept out of the cess. So, BDs, there will not be any cess. So, what the paragraph indicates is already there is a pressure group acting in the form of state governments. Despite such pulls and pressures, he is talking about that previous paragraph. Despite such pulls and pressures, in a best case scenario, if you look at the best case scenario, the rate setting process should take at least a fortnight rate setting must be completed within 15 days and the council could meet sometime in April to approve the rates. So, from April 1 rate setting process must be completed in 14 days. Subsequently, somewhere in the mid of April, then this GST council can sit. Please understand, this is in the future. So, please understand the words used in English grammar. Here the rate setting process should take at least a fortnight, talking about future, and the council could meet sometime in April, could meet, should approve. So, all these things are used. Please understand English carefully. So, these are basically talking about future course of action, giving lakhs of enterprises just about 2 months to switch to GST regime. So, after that how much time is left over to July 1? 2 months is left over. So, giving lakhs of enterprises just about 2 months to switch to GST regime with all its implications for supply chains, because there will be lot of implications for the supply chains. Supply chains means, in fact, one final product will have several supply chains in the back end. If you are interested in some product like tomato sauce, then the back end chain involves the production of tomatoes, market for tomatoes, then grading of tomatoes, then subsequently those tomatoes will go to food processing industry. So, like that it has so many back end linkages. So, that is basically supply chains. So, there will have lot many implications on the back end supply chains. So, 2 months is not sufficient. Pricing strategies and accounting systems, 2 months is not sufficient because lot many things are to be done by the industry and it will have its implications for supply chains. Pricing strategies, pricing strategy has to change, accounting systems, they also need to change. So, if some time is not sufficient, it could lead to a messy start, dirty start, worst start. So, that is the meaning of messy start. So, here giving lakhs of enterprises just about 2 months to switch to the GST regime with all its implications for supply chains, pricing strategies and accounting systems could lead to a messy start. Right? Messy means dirty, untidy, disorderly. In this particular case, the meaning is disorderly. So, the messy start is disorderly start. The center must keep its mind open. So, 2 months may not be sufficient. Center must keep its mind open on pushing forward the rollout. I have already told you what is the meaning of rollout. So, center must keep open mind on pushing forward the rollout by a month or so. So, please postpone it a month or so, it does not matter. While industry should raise above heckling over rates, industry should not make noise about the rates. The fitment process, now during the first half of April, this fitment process will take place. Industry should not make unnecessary heckling, or you can say unnecessary noise must be avoided. So, here rollout we just now discussed. What is the meaning of heckling? Heckling is basically interrupting with aggressive postures. So, the industry must cooperate, it should not interrupt the process when the fitment process is going on. So, here industry must raise above heckling over rates and invest more lobbying energy on bigger worries such as the GST's penal anti-profiteering clauses. So, the industry, please leave about the fitment process, do not make noise on which item has got how much percentage of tax. Please do not go into that type of lobbying. Please concentrate more on bigger issues. What is bigger issue? The bigger issue is GST's penal anti-profiteering clauses. What is meant by anti-profiteering clause? That means, as I have already told you, goods will be taxed at 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. And what is the guarantee? When some product is not taxed by the government and it is 0%, what is the guarantee that the industry will pass on the benefit to the end user? So, if industry does some mischief, there are some penal provisions under anti-profiteering clause. So, when the benefit is not passed on to the consumer, then anti-profiteering clause will come into picture. So, these are penal provisions. So, the last paragraph says, don't heckle, don't argue, don't make noise on the fitment process which my product have 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. Please don't argue, but your bigger worry or bigger lobbying must be to look at the basic issue of penal anti-profiteering clauses, right. So, penal means this is relating to punishment given by law. So, we came to the end of the Hindu editorial of yesterday. The crux of the matter or final thing is most of the things are over, only the basic thing left over is fitment process. Let GST council take conscious decision. There should not be any lobbying either by states or by industry, and if required please postpone it by 1 month or so, because lot many issues are involved here. Basically in implementation, the industry should look at back end linkages. At the same time, pricing strategy is to be modified after GST. So, to look at all these aspects, it requires some time. If required, please postpone it by 1 month. So, this is all about the Hindu editorial of yesterday, and tomorrow we are going to deliberate equally important issue of bad loans. Bad loans calls for political solution. So, this is Economic Times editorial of today, and tomorrow we are going to deliberate on this. Right friends, with this let us conclude today's comprehension ability discussion. We discussed lot many things about goods and services tax. Have a nice day. Thank you.